VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon. It's a beautiful day for wherever you are, and we're coming up on Thanksgiving, which we have lots to be thankful for. We have an interesting program today, and we're going to be talking about the cyber world. Now, some of you might say, what do you mean cyber world? I can hardly work a mouse. Well, some of us here at VCY America, even though we're older, we have to get used to the new world of communications. And, of course, all of our staff are well versed in it. But every once in a while, you bump into a warning that comes to you, or you hear about somebody hacking somebody's site. We've had it happen here as well, where somebody hacked into something. But the issue we're talking about today is cyber warfare. That's right. And our topic, if you gave the program a topic, it'll be Cyber Pearl Harbor. Our guest today is Bennet Kelley, the founder of the Internet Law Center. Now, he has been described by an affiliate publication as one of the top 10 qualified attorneys in Internet law. He's a co-chair of the California Bar Cyberspace Committee and has played a leading role in shaping Internet law and policy, having testified and lobbied on the Internet issues in Washington and Sacramento, and leading the effort to develop a cyberspace primer for incoming state lawmakers. And we're so glad to have Bennet with us, Bennet Kelley. And Bennet, there's a new term, and that's come into our language. It's called Cyber Pearl Harbor. What in the world does this mean?
Well, Cyber Pearl Harbor right now is a theoretical term. It's the possibility that there could be a cyber attack of a magnitude of Pearl Harbor or 9/11, for example.
Oh, wow.
And so right now what our policymakers are focused on is making sure that cyber Pearl Harbor is just a term and not a historical event.
Kelley, let's back up to, remember Y2K?
Yes.
Everybody, even some computer people that I knew, figured the world might be coming to an end because everything seems to be run by computers. Power grids, water supply, distribution of resources, even the switching of gas and oil by using computers. And I mean, everything has been, in the airplane, we have computers. The old days we used to use what was called the VOR and the NDB and all these kind of things when you fly an airplane. But years came and the NDB was taken out of the panel, and there we sit with GPS computers and little pictures of ourselves flying across even artificial horizon and artificial landscape where you can see this, all on computers.
Right.
But now you're saying, this is Pearl Harbor. Could it be that... Well, of course, we've talked about computers going out in Y2K. Thankfully, it didn't. But the Cyber Pearl Harbor thing, there's evidence, I believe. You're saying that there's been penetration of our cyber world already?
There has. There's been reports of cyber attacks increasing by as much as 40%. Major sections of the U.S. government have been penetrated by the Chinese and Russians, ranging from intelligence to defense agencies. Many corporate 500 companies have been penetrated, and as well as individuals who, significant individuals have been penetrated as well. To try to, the Chinese are really focused on trying to get information on dissidents here in the United States, and so individual Gmail accounts are penetrated to try to find out what communications are going back and forth between the U.S. and China.
Now, I got a list here of some of the areas that have been penetrated. The CIA website, the U.S. Senate, other U.S. officials, the defense contractors, including Lockheed Martin, the International Monetary Fund. Good grief. And then you come with the NASDAQ and Citibank.
Right. It's alarming. And then, of course, one we have to keep in mind that there's a reluctance to report. And so, the actual extent of penetration could even be greater. And although that may change because there may be some financial incentives to disclose, Citibank's failure to disclose, or at least failure to timely disclose, and the limited disclosure they gave in terms of the breadth of the breach that they had, has led some securities regulators to question whether a significant data breach needs to be disclosed to the markets, so that investors aren't taken advantage of by a major event.
Well, Kelly, there have been so many, I should say Bennet, there have been so many cases whereby we have heard where laptops that have 25 or 30,000 bits of vital information, some of them very personal, or very, very significant in defense or whatever. And this type of compromise, what about sometimes even mailing lists or email lists, which can be in the millions, that literally can be compromised? This is very scary stuff.
Well, and you tap on you have a good sense for the breadth of the issue, and because it's not just military. One thing that people who are penetrating are looking for is also personal data, like what you just talked about. Because they can use that for identity theft. Small businesses in the United States are targeted because they're lesser security levels, but to get that type of information, to engage in wire fraud. So it's definitely something that's happening at that micro level. But it's being done on an economic level. They're mining accounts to get intelligence on technology, IP, as well as, for example, in certain cases, to figure out bidding strategies in competitive situations. When China is up against a U.S. company, they kind of get a sense of what, how they may play a certain bid.
I'm not trying to be picking on the Chinese in the broad spectrum as far as their ethnic background, but I, about 6 months ago, stopped by to pick up some carryout at a little Chinese restaurant. And I walked out the door with what I had, and by the next morning I get a phone call from the credit card company. And they indicated, we believe that there's been fraud perpetrated against your card. And I thought, well, goodness, what would have caused this? And they found that, that evening I used the card there, and by morning I had a $500 airplane ticket and 2 or 3 $1 test applications, which the web people or the credit card people said that was the way they test it to make sure that the transaction will go through. But that was what triggered it, and thankfully the credit card people nailed it, and we weren't compromised. But when you say, that's just a simple transaction at a restaurant.
Right. Well, that's not that uncommon. I went to a restaurant in Cancun and found out that same night I purchased all this stereo equipment in New York.
Boy. Well, and what they do, they get your credit card numbers, and if I understand correctly, people can literally, these are people who have no good intent, but they can go out and purchase a credit card number for $10.
There are places, yes. I've seen 60-minute episodes where you can just buy them, blocks of credit card numbers.
Well, of course, that just affects but when we're talking about defense now, we're talking about design of war machines and things that are designed to protect us. What about atomic energy and the secrets there? What about some of the specs on some of these rockets and things we see emerging in other countries? Iran has just come up with some big missile thing and a launcher that they claim can touch Israel from anywhere.
Well, you actually touched on 3 great examples. Let's start with Iran.
Okay.
The United States actually, officially the United States has never claimed ownership of this, but the United States is believed to be responsible for the Stuxnet virus, and that is reported to have had infected Iran's nuclear systems, so that to such an extent that it delayed the progress of their nuclear program by as much as 2 or 3 years. So it's a major success. Although we've never been official confirmation on our side. The U.S. has also started a cyber command concurrently with this, and so that now is part of the over Pentagon structure and the whole Joint Chiefs of Staff, working with that as part of their strategy planning. Now, the other area you talked about, you mentioned energy, and there was a recent, and also rockets and satellites. We've had Chinese attacks on our satellites that have caused malfunction of satellites, and just recently there was a very disturbing attack on a small utility in Illinois, which many believe to be kind of a probe, like a test hack to see how long it would take and what can be done as part of the hack. And here, what they did was they accessed the utility generator and kept shutting it down on and off, to more or less cause it just to burn out.
Oh, wow.
And shut down.
Starting surge currents, yeah.
And so the concern, so this was clearly, and they're attributing it to Russia. And the concern is that, imagine if this was done on a larger scale. And could be used to shut down an entire grid for a region or the whole country. Mm-hmm. Or the other scenario people mentioned, which I'm not sure if it's even hooked up so that this is possible, is what if someone hacked into the system, was able to open up Hoover Dam?
Wow, yeah. And it wasn't too long ago, we, as you speak today, your voice is going about a mile from here to our uplink site, a big 17-foot dish. It's being beamed 20,000 miles out into space. It comes down in North Carolina. It's processed. It's sent back to space 20,000 miles more. And then it comes down all over the footprint over the United States. But recently, of course, they had to change satellites. And one was running low on whatever it runs low on. And so our engineers had to be up late at night as they moved one satellite to take over for the other one. And the interesting thing, it went smoothly. You hardly noticed a problem. But when you think that those satellites are controlled by computers, I've been in the control room out in the east and seen this, just a LCD screen, and there's a box, third dimension box, and in the middle it shows the picture of literally where that satellite is. And the box is 40 miles square, and inside there, of course, is a satellite. And if that satellite moves out of that box, we lose contact with it here on Earth. But the interesting thing is, it is a computer pushing the arrow keys, and you move the satellite around. What happens if somebody gets into that?
Well, that's what has happened on a couple of occasions with some of our satellites, and so that's a concern. And we're also seeing, we've seen it used in warfare. Russia had several cyber attacks that have been quite successful against Estonia and Georgia, and the Georgia one was right before they invaded, and they were able to kind of disable a lot of their defenses before they even launched the invasion. So the first shot fired was actually a mouse. And so you get a picture. We all have seen the images from the Cold War of the Russians on in Red Square on May Day. Or picture a bunch of people in their bathrobes and slippers, and that's the new Russian army.
Oh my! Well, we're going to be talking more about this, folks, and the seriousness of it. We're coming up on a hard break. When we come back, our guest Bennet Kelley. He's an attorney, highly acclaimed in the field of Internet law. We're going to talk more about how vulnerable we are in this country and things that we need to know, because some of this could end up being warfare against us. Stick with us. This is Crosstalk on VCY.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geological scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, has it always been cold up in the Arctic Circle?
Chris, there have been times in the past when it's been quite warm. On average, about 30 degrees warmer in the wintertime there than it is now. Now, this has been determined by studying a peat deposit up near the Arctic Circle. They found not only trees and plants that grow today in more tropical climates, but they found fossils of animals that are only found in rather warm latitudes. Now, Chris, this fits the biblical idea. The Ice Age came after the flood, but it wasn't necessarily a cold time. It was a warmer time when there was more evaporation and precipitation, the falling snow packing into ice and becoming glaciers. Chris, seems like everything we find fits the Back to Genesis model.
For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org. For the Institute for Creation Research, I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
welcome back to Crosstalk, where today we're talking about the cyber world. We're talking about cyber Pearl Harbor. We're talking about this thing called computers, which in essence have dominated and continue to dominate our lives in a more complex way every time we use them. And our guest today is Bennet Kelley, a well-qualified Internet law attorney. In fact, he heads up the Internet Law Center, has been described by an affiliate as one of the top 10 qualified attorneys in Internet law. I'll tell you what, Bennet, the issue, of course, which we think about, the personal information, but during the break you mentioned something that was very interesting and important, and that is the medical records.
Correct.
Share with us your thoughts.
Well, one point of getting information, for improper purposes, and cyber thieves often do, is they'll try to penetrate and get access to your medical records, because they're a treasure trove of information, both financial, but also your personal history information, which can then be used for identity theft purposes. And so that's often a major source of attack for cyber criminals. And that, and of course, your financial records are a major source. And every year, consumers lose millions because of it. And so,
now you mentioned that the U.S. networks, these attacks, have literally increased by 40% in the last year.
Correct.
Now, do you believe that we're at a peak, or do you think we're going to see more?
I think we're going to see more, but also keep in mind, it's one of those things where to what extent is the measurement being affected by greater attention to it. It could be that these things were happening before, just weren't being reported. But yeah, I think when you have government officials at high levels expressing that level of concern, I think we're seeing an increase that's going to continue, and one that obviously is going to require greater vigilance.
Shamelessly, an item of news here. This is months ago. I heard them talking about the fact that China has literally declared cyber war against the United States. Well, Russia's been doing it even before this. But the issue, of course, let's talk about this thing called wire fraud, seeking to initiate wire transfers to Chinese companies. What's this all about? Well,
the FBI has detected a huge movement of funds from basically defrauding U.S. small businesses and wiring the money over to China. And it seems to be somewhat coordinated, and they're estimating like $20 to $40 million in losses each year because of that. And so, the targeting is the smaller businesses who may not have the same level of security as a larger business. And, but still, money's money regardless of where it comes from.
I had a neighbor who lived near my house, and he came over one day with a real heartbreaking story. And in a nutshell, just pulling it together, he had been scammed by what was then known as the Nigerian scam.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
The Nigerian scam, actually, there's I don't know if you've ever seen a David Mamet movie called The Spanish Prisoner. But it's a con game that goes back to, I think, the 1400s. And the Spanish prisoner concept is, I guess during the wars with the Moors, they would say, I have my sister or, whatever, my daughter is locked up in a castle, and if you can give me, I just need to pay this ransom to get her free, and I will give you your hand in marriage. And so they would pay a certain amount, and then, of course, they would say, well, there's one little hiccup, just pay a little bit more, and we'll do it. And, of course, you never see the girl, and you just keep getting milked for more and more money.
Sure.
Well, a con that goes back to the 1400s found its way onto the Internet. Well, actually, in the 90s, it was a fax fraud that was going around. And then with email, it now became known as the Nigerian scam, because it was always someone in Nigeria who had money, and because of the dictatorship that was in place, they weren't able to get the money out. So if you give me your bank account information, I was able to wire it to you, and of course that was used to then defraud people. And we all joke about it, but actually there's hundreds of bankruptcies in the United States and Britain, and actually several Americans who have gone to Nigeria, somewhat angrily to find out what happened, have been killed.
Well, the gentleman I'm talking about was a man with a real benevolent heart. And but it sounded so attractive, and this particular guy even was spouting religious words, talking about God bless you and all this kind of stuff. and said that that some wealthy relative had died, but they can't, like exactly what you said, couldn't get the money out of the country,
Right.
and so they needed a bank account, and this man lost close to $250,000.
There was a scam that went on just recently, where through Facebook mainly, but you were getting emails from people you knew that said, "I'm traveling over in London or wherever, and have been robbed, and I need, if you can just send me some money so I can get home, I'll repay you."
Mm.
So they're seeking a low threshold. Send me $100, send me whatever. And obviously, if you do it on a volume level, it's quite a big payoff. And a number of people fell for it, and it was really quite prevalent on Facebook for about a month.
Now, the Obama administration has responded to the threat by establishing the Cyber Command in the Pentagon.
Correct.
And is this effective, or is this just getting started? What do you think of this?
Well, I think a couple of years ago, the kind of the general tenor of what was being said among the outside military community was that we're way behind, and with these moves, you're starting to hear more. We're catching up, we're getting there. Mm. So it's a move forward. Obviously, we're running against a target that's running as well, and so not only do we have to play catch up, but we have to try to run faster than them. And this is going to be an ongoing battle, for the rest of our lives, because technology is going to keep progressing, and the issue is who can stay ahead.
Well, these people are cunningly brilliant, and have they're brilliant people on both sides. In fun, we call experts in computerism geeks, but they're far more than geeks. They understand in depth how to perpetrate some of these Nigerian scams. I had several of those approach me, and boy, some of the stories they would come up with, it make you almost laugh. A good friend of mine in the FBI, I called some of these to their attention, and he said that it was an increasing thing, and they were even in cahoots with some of the banks in Nigeria. There were some of the guys doing the scams were actually employees of a Nigerian bank.
Not surprising. No, I mean at one point it was a significant source of income for the country.
Whoa.
And just so you mentioned talking to your friend at the FBI,
yeah.
Your listeners might want to know if they're ever victimized. There's a website called the Internet Crime Complaint Center.
Okay.
Joint Justice Department FBI effort, and if they will take your complaint and get it to the appropriate authorities, whether it's local or federal.
Oh, give us that website again, or how they get their
Internet
complaint.
Crime Complaint Center, and I think it's ICCC.org or .gov. Let me just double check that. And it's a way for you to get your complaint processed, and it happens quickly. I've had on behalf of a client, I had to use it and have been contacted in a matter of days.
You're saying ICCC, I and 3 C's.
Yes.
Either .gov or .org.
Right, I'm just looking it up right now.
Sure. Well, folks, this is something very important, and many people are very trusting, and there's nothing more flattering than to find somebody who's got $17 million and wants to share a portion of that with you for helping them to get their money away from a tyrannical government in some country. And, of course, the hard times are discussed, and you're such a blessing and what a helper you can be. And with that, they'll award you with several millions of dollars. It sounds very attractive.
It's IC3.gov.
IC and the number 3?
The number 3.gov.
IC and the number 3.gov. Well, I'll tell you what, right now we're talking to Bennet Kelley, and we're talking about Internet law. We're talking about the scams that are out there. The issue of encryption. Many times when you're getting software, you can order some of these encryption programs. Does that help at all?
It does. It makes it significantly harder. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's the lack of encryption that often leads to some of the problems that we have.
Well, in your best advice, what is the best way for our nation to address this issue, the most effective way?
I think one is lead by example. I think the government can take steps to make sure that they're securing their own systems and make clear with the contractors they choose that they're considering security as one element of the evaluation for projects. It's not just the price and the quality of your schedule. It's also whatever information you're processing, will it be secure? That's one thing. The other thing is to make consumers aware. of the issue and what they can do. I know Congress right now is considering data breach legislation to create a national standard, and that's one. Although we do have about 40 states now or more that have data breach laws that require companies to disclose to consumers when they've had a breach, so they can take measures to protect themselves and ensure that there haven't been improper charges to their accounts. And so, obviously, work with, contact your member of Congress and discuss the issue with them to make sure, and if you support it, definitely push for it. And those are some of the examples of what we can do. But just be vigilant, be smart, and just remember. There's a famous cartoon from the New Yorker. It's of a dog on the internet talking to, while he's on the keyboard, talking to a dog that's in the background, saying, "The nice thing about the internet is no one knows you're a dog." And so just remember that email you got, it may be from a dog.
And there have been a lot. I'll tell you what. There have been a lot of frightening crimes that have occurred, even of these kids that are texting or going back and forth on the email or these so-called social networks.
Right.
One little girl I know was intimidated by, in fact, attacked by a mother of a competing young person and literally perpetrated herself as a boy. And the girl feeling jilted when she really went, this other adult went ape with the computer, and the girl committed suicide because she was so depressed.
Right.
And this is criminal.
His mom. And, I think her last text to her was, we wish you were never born, or something like that. And it was just cruel. And unfortunately, there were no laws in Missouri where she lived to really prosecute her. So they actually tried very much of a legal stretch to try her out here in California for violating MySpace's terms and conditions. But she ultimately was acquitted. But it just highlighted the need for some sort of regulation there. There's a wild, wild west atmosphere that kind of permeates the internet, largely because of the anonymity that you can be a dog or you can be your neighbor's boyfriend, even though you're not. And that's starting to change. There have been some recent cases where they've unmasked people who've been abusing people, and then held them accountable. I've actually handled several cases in that area, and it's important that you address this view that you can hide behind a fake identity and just do anything. And I think as that's going to evolve, and I think once people realize there are consequences for what they do online and offline, then we might see a different standard.
We're going to take a break in just a few moments. We'll take that break, and we're going to come back. We're going to open our phone lines. In fact, as I push the button right now, they're all open. If you'd like to call in with your questions, maybe some experiences that you have gone through. I'm sure Bennet Kelley, who's our guest today, well qualified to address the issues of the Internet, from the Internet Law Center, cyberspace, and, of course, our topic today, Cyber Pearl Harbor. We'll be right back in 60 seconds.
Is America on a collision course with God? In the book, As America Has Done to Israel, author John McTernan indicates there is a direct correlation between the alarming number of massive disasters striking America and our leaders pressuring Israel to surrender her land for peace. Costing hundreds of lives and causing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of damage, dozens of disasters, including devastating earthquakes, raging fires, hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes, have hit America, and always within just a short time after putting pressure on Israel. The book not only points out the correlation to these events, but also gives guidance as to what you can do as an individual, and what America can do to change the direction of our country in relation to Israel. Copies of the book, As America Has Done to Israel, are available for a donation of $17 or more to VCY America, and can be obtained by calling 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
Okay, we're ready to take your calls. If you'd like to call us at 1-800-733-9829. maybe you have been scammed or what do they call it? Hacked. We've seen that happen around here. We've had warnings from people who provide information, bloggers, of course, people posing as a blogger, or people using the internet to defame people using the internet to scam people out of funding. It's a powerful tool. But what's your experience out there? And the telephone number is 800-733-9829. If you want to be anonymous, you can do so. If you want to call and tell us where you're calling from, fine. We promise you we're not going to give out your email address. We don't even know it. You're calling us on the 800 number. It's toll-free from anywhere on the planet, and we'd be happy to have you call. 800-733-9829. Maybe you have some questions. And I know some of the older folk aren't that active aside from email, but here we have to transmit picture files, data. In fact, we have to transmit video from our one headquarters here a mile up the street. We're talking full quality video that has to be transferred to our television station here. And so the programs that are edited, spot announcements, all of the things, the weather, everything has to be transmit by digital transmission. So the cyber world has become very important. I see our lines are literally jammed at this moment, Bennett. But I had a question to sneak in before they do this. And when we're thinking about the cyberspace and all of the hazards that are out there, this could literally shut down our country. And I'm just wondering what, as we look at this, what happens if? Just what happens if one of these, they call them electronic pulse bombs that goes off? It doesn't kill anybody, but it does literally shut down electrical and electronic and digital equipment as though we had gone back to the Dark Ages. What happens then?
Well, I think that's something the Pentagon has just started working on and tried to come up with a plan for what to do in the event of a cyber emergency. Whether there's some part of the grid that needs to be shut down to contain a situation, and they're trying to work out, what are the critical things that we need to get up running first in the event of attack. And so they're working with industry as well to figure out what's the best way to implement a plan in the event of a cyber crisis.
But they say even if this pulse thing goes off, it'll shut down the ignitions of motor vehicles. It's amazing.
You may recall in the 70s, President Carter had there was the idea of the neutron bomb.
Yeah,
which
right.
Just it kept buildings in place, but just killed people. Mm-hmm. And so the technology is still it's just the same type of approach. It's just moved into the cyber world.
We're going to go to the telephones right now, and Kevin is online from Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And Kevin, you're on the air with Bennet Kelley.
Yeah, yesterday I opened up my email, and I got something that said USPFO. As a matter of fact, I have it printed off right in front of me here. And I opened it, and it said delivery failure notification, and then it said print out the attached shipment label. Now, so I opened the folder, and I immediately got a Trojan virus on the computer. And I'm a birther. I have over 10,000 comments out there on the blogs. And I think somebody, got a hold of my email address through that and sent me this virus. Another time, a guy put something on my blog, and he said, yeah, open this, and you'll be able to find out more about how Obama's illegal. So I opened it, and it said, thank you. You've just given me your IP address.
How exciting.
And then I got one more comment. In the book 1984, the main character, Winston Smith, works for the Ministry of Truth, and his job is to change the news so that it's more politically correct. And what I've noticed is that I'll read an article, and a couple days later I'll go back to look at that article that I had read online, and the same exact news outlet will have a slightly altered article there. It'll leave out something or add something.
Your comment, Bennett.
Well, I think I'm trying to remember. Are we still at war with Oceania or not? But I think in terms of what you experienced with the virus, it's kind of like when you were a kid going out for Halloween. You eat the candy from the people you know, and you have your parents check the candy from the people you didn't. And except today, the people checking your candy are, you have software to scan for that type of stuff. And if you don't know the people, don't open it. Particularly, something like a regular notice you would get for failure of delivery. Well, you should, try to be familiar with what the type of response you get when that normally happens with your ISP. So that, if it doesn't look like the one you normally get from your ISP, it probably isn't.
Let's go to Roy, and we've got a couple open lines. So, folks, the phone number 800-733-9829. And let's go to Roy in Toma. Roy, you're on the air. Hello.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes. I just have a quick question. Do you see any connection between all this cyber criminal activity to RFI implants in people as far as the mark of the beast? I'm not sure if you're biblically.
Our guest is not discussing it from a theological standpoint today, but you raise an interesting question. Go ahead with your question on the technical side.
Well, do you see this cyber activity as a precursor to RFI implants in people?
Actually, I am named after a priest, if that's what that's worth. But the RFID has come up in several state legislatures, and I know here in California it's a big issue. And it's gotten a lot of pushback, and so there's been a lot of limits in place in terms of how it can be used and rolled out. Because I think there is a big, the prior caller referred to 1984. There really is a big 1984 concern when it comes to RFID. So, I can't really address the biblical meaning you're referring to, but RFID is something that people are very sensitive to, and at the policy level. And so, I wouldn't be worried just yet about anything of the magnitude that you're talking about.
Okay, we thank you very much. Let's move on to Avoca, Wisconsin. We're going to talk with Kevin. And some of you out of Wisconsinites, we're looking forward to your calls. Let's hear from you. 800-733-9829. And Kevin, you're on the air.
Yeah, I guess what I'm kind of showing is in the correlations between Arthur Clarke's book and what happened 9/11, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and relatively analyzing areas of energy. And how in computer science, when you take a look at Goodwill Hunting, in a communications relative world, and although we're not on a theological relativity, we're still dealing with spiritualities that are very close in an internet between creation and light energy that God still controls. Case in point, when you take a look at the movie War Games, remember that with
thermonuclear warfare?
Yeah, and the name of the computer was taken from the Bible. It was a computer's name, Joshua. Okay? Now, and you take a look at these correlations where it was said even years ago that technology was way ahead of man. Now, when you go back to when the Titanic sunk, and you understand that man connected relative to not understanding Einstein's theorems in relativity in 2001, A Space Odyssey, and you take a look at these factors, okay, and in Apollo 13, what was the name of the unit? Odyssey. Now, there's correlations in authors. So when you go back to Moses, God controls the pen.
Excellent.
And when you see these things, there are theological connections, whether mankind wants to accept it. Case in point, something hit me very simply, and God hit me with it. Kevin, in voice activation, in computers or in biology, it's still created by God. Because in biology, Darwin missed it, and so did Freud and Darwin. When you look at crystalline communications in ice caps, the ice caps melting, think about crystal sugar. I got a vision of a bag of crystal sugar one night, and I was like, oh, man, that's a crystalline communications cap. That's all the biology on the planet.
Interesting, Kevin. We sure appreciate your thoughts on the matter. And as we're moving along here with other calls, stand by. We're going to go to Katie in Pensacola, Florida. Katie, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes. A couple of months ago, I received an email from a well-known social media, and it said something like, your account information was accidentally deleted. Please enter it here. to resubmit it or reactivate your account. And I had never heard of the social media at that point, so I was immediately suspicious. And I did a little bit of research and found out that other people had had problems with the social media and had received the same email. And the email was directly from the social media, so I actually went on the FBI website and submitted it on their online crime website.
Please say a command. Please say a command. Please say a command.
The cyber war seems to have begun here. Katie,
yes, sir?
I don't know if did you get the point there, Bennett?
I guess what happened to her is something to look out for, because it's the whole wolf in sheep's clothing. Basically, cyber predators try to mask, fish and use the appearance of emails being from other sources, and they're not. And so, if you're not sure about something, contact the source. For example, the IRS. They'll tell you they don't send emails. And so you might want, if you got an email from Facebook or one of the other social media outlets, contact them. Widespread, they'll often have something published on their website saying, "Hey, ignore that. That is fraud."
Right. The strange thing was, though, is the website. I know they can make it look like it's directly from the company, but
right.
So the email I received had the social media's, URL or whatever, and then it had their telephone number and information, which matched on their website, which obviously could be duplicated. But
they cut and pasted to just move it over.
Then the thing is, on the website, they made it extremely difficult to contact them, and every time you tried to contact them, they just made it almost impossible to contact them via their website, any way to contact them. And then I went to Better Business Bureau. They had a very poor rating. And then I went to look up their telephone number and all their information on Better Business, and Better Business had not even been able to get in contact with them on major social media. Well, then I noticed that I don't know how many people, 80 people or something like that, had issued complaints.
Katie, thank you for bringing that to our attention from Pensacola, Florida. We're going to move right along and appreciate that. Wish we had an answer for everyone. Let's go to Carl in Lake Delton. And Carl, you're on the air.
Hey, God bless you guys. I talked to the inventor of a neutron bomb on the radio program, the guy who invented the neutron bomb, and I said, I read about your bomb in the Bible. He says, well, it can't be the bomb after the Bible. But they read the effects of what a neutron bomb does to a human being. And if you read Zechariah 14:12, it is almost verbatim, word for word, exactly what the neutron bomb will do to people when they attack Jerusalem. And modern technology is just going unbelievably, but it's matching up with the Bible.
Zechariah, what was the chapter?
Zechariah 14:12.
14:12.
Yeah, if you look up the effects of a neutron bomb and look up Zechariah 14:12, they are almost word for word identical.
Interesting. We're going to have to cut away for a break, but we'll be right back. Thanks, Carl, for your call. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. Recently on our radio program, we talked to Dr. Jimmy DeYoung about the red heifer. Now, for many years, we have talked about the red heifer and the need for the people of Israel, the Jewish people, the priests, the rabbis, to obtain a perfect, unblemished red heifer. Ironically, the red heifer, it looks like, has come from the United States of America, and particularly from my home state, where I was born, Mississippi. In fact, Dr. Jimmy DeYoung himself was there on the farm of the breeder with a rabbi from Israel as they examined and as he filmed the examination of the red heifer. Dr. Jimmy DeYoung now reports that the red heifer has been taken back to Israel. They have a breeding program not only in Mississippi, but in Israel as well. The Bible speaks of the Jewish people obtaining that perfect red heifer to begin sacrifices. It's an exciting time to be alive. Our website, worldviewweekend.com.
And we're back with you with the final segment of Crosstalk. Boy, this hour goes by so quickly. But want to share, first of an opportunity, our guest today, Bennet Kelley. And Bennet, you obviously have a website. You're into the cyber business. And
I do. InternetLawCenter.net.
InternetLawCenter.net, all run together, right? No caps?
No caps. InternetLawCenter.net. On Twitter at InternetLawCent. You just drop the ER.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter there.
And do you have any books that you've published that you want to mention?
No, nothing I want to mention right now, but I'm also host of a web radio show called Cyber Law and Business Report on Webmaster Radio. Webmaster
Radio. All right. Well, we're going to go back here to, in fact, we got a truck driver from Erie, Pennsylvania online. And driver, I don't even have your name, but you're welcome on the line. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Catching you on 105.5 FM out here near Erie, Pennsylvania on a beautiful sunny fall day.
Great.
Enjoying your show, and I just wanted to say that we all need to have a game plan, of course, besides trusting our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But when the stuff hits the fan in the wake of an electromagnetic pulse, I'm hoping to at least have a little bit of folding money on me so that I can rent a horse and ride my horse back home to my wife and family, which would probably be a long ride for me. But when the truck stops running, I'm going to have to either start hoofing it or get a horse to hoof it for me.
Well, you can carry a horse on that truck.
Oh, that'd be great if I was hauling horses. I could have my pick and pick the fastest one.
Well, Bennet, your thoughts there to our driver?
Well, I mean, we were talking about this earlier offline. I mean, the fact that his truck has computers on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if when trouble strikes, his possibility his truck mate is shut down. And
yes.
So, yeah, he's right. He may need a horse.
And your GPS thing up on top, the little white thing that's usually on top of every cab, which reports back to your company, your location, your speed, whether or not you stop for a break.
Right. I mean, in my case, if I had the horse, my wife's pretty confident I'd just be going in circles without the GPS. So.
Hey, we enjoy your show out here. You help the miles go by, guys.
Hey, thank you, sir. Nice,
thank you. God bless you.
Nice to talk to you. Let's move right along to Bruce in Iron River. Bruce, you're on the air. Go ahead. Hello, Bruce.
Yes.
You're on the air.
Thank you. How do we know that the New World Order isn't engineering all these scams around the world, and we perceive them as governments opposing other governments and that type of thing?
We talk about, what is it, Ronald Reagan once said, politics are a lot like the first oldest profession. And I think scam artists, if they're not, they'd be the second or third oldest profession. I mean, some of the stuff that you see on the Internet, you've been seeing offline for hundreds of years. We were talking earlier about the Spanish prisoner scenario, which became the Nigerian scam. So, I mean, technology itself is neither good nor bad. It is just what it is. It's just people can be good or bad, and they use it for those purposes. And so, the incarnations of it change, but it still just comes down to someone acting for good or someone acting for bad.
Well, and I'm so glad, Bennet, that you mentioned that. Thanks, Bruce, for being on the line. We're just coming up on the end right now with about 2 minutes to spare. But I think what Bennet has mentioned, Bennet Kelley, our guest today, is that even when we're talking about gun control, I own several guns. I've never once seen them go out and hunt people down and shoot them. No. A gun is an inanimate object. But it is the evilness in the heart of man that causes this type of stuff to go on. And this being a broadcast on a Christian network, the Bible says the heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. And all you need is a perverted mind to dream up some scam that is destructive. And it can damage people's character. You can slander people with it. You can invade their bank accounts. You can, all of these things. And so the Bible says, cleave to that which is good and abhor that which is evil. And it all goes back to character, doesn't it?
It does. And so, I mean, the law assumes people acting in a proper way, but it also has to address the fact that people don't act that way. And we're just playing a little bit of catch-up now with the developments on the Internet, but we're getting there.
Well, and the issue that there is a force that is defending that which is righteous. And there's a penalty to pay if you mess up. And I'm assuming that, I was recently hearing somebody talking about a legal penalty for those who are scamming and pretending they're somebody they're not.
There's, that's called phishing. And, yeah, I mean, fraud is fraud, whether it's online or offline, so there's penalties for that. There can be penalties for defamation. Mm-hmm. There's penalties for hacking and breaking into someone's account. So, yes, I mean, the criminal law has, permeated into cyberspace. And it's just trying to play catch up with the different permutations that happen to make sure that the law is able to respond swiftly and provide the appropriate deterrent.
Let's go back to that website, which I think everybody that uses computers needs to be aware of, and it was IC3?
IC3.gov.
IC and the number 3.gov. If somebody starts messing around with your computer communications or corrupting or appears to be a scam, IC3.gov, G-O-V.
I had a client that got a death threat, and they had police calling them later that day. So,
if somebody because I've heard of many that have had death threats. I've been threatened. Never,
but yeah.
But if you're a talk show host, you always get threatened anyway. But I want to thank you very much for sharing with us, Bennet, and
a pleasure.
We will remember your organization and those that address there, ic3.gov, G-O-V, right?
Yes.
And I thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today.
Thank you. Take care.
You betcha. Bye-bye now. Well, as we come to the end of a program which was devoted just simply to make us aware that this tool, which can be a blessing or a curse, it can be used to be honorable and it can be used to be dishonorable. And so, again, if it's a weapon, the weapon can be used with honor or dishonor. If it's a tool, if you're driving your car and smashing into somebody, doing something that's not honorable, I guess we have to recognize that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked, and the changing power of the Lord Jesus Christ can change us from darkness to light. The light of God's Word, which shines deep into the heart of people and, yes, convicts us of sin. Appreciate you joining us. Kind of a unique program dealing with electronics and data, but it really deals with the motive of the heart. Thanks for joining us on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the Internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.